The waitress spoke to the billionaire's mother in sign language, but what she said shocked everyone. Because this wasn't just any waitress. She was a brilliant Oxford graduate whose life had been stolen by the man who was about to become the billionaire's business partner. What happened next is a story of betrayal, justice, and the moment one woman's courage brought a criminal empire crashing down. Stay with me, because this will restore your faith in karma. Welcome to Radiant Story and Tales. While you are here, I want you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share to your loved ones. This will help us bring more interesting stories. Let me tell you a story about courage, about a young woman who lost everything, and how one simple act of kindness changed the course of her entire life. Her name was Emma Taylor, and when you saw her moving quietly between tables at Bellamy's, one of London's most exclusive restaurants, you would never have guessed the secret she was carrying. At 24 years old, she looked like any other waitress. Black uniform pressed perfectly, smile polite but distant, movements careful and practiced. But Emma was hiding something. She was hiding who she really was. You see, 3 years ago, Emma had been someone completely different. She graduated from Oxford University with honors in linguistics and finance. She'd built a company from nothing. She'd been engaged to a man she loved with her whole heart. She'd had patents, clients, a future so bright it hurt to look at. And then, in the space of a few months, it all came crashing down. The man she'd trusted with everything, her fiancé, her business partner, a man named Richard Wells, had stolen it all. Her work, her reputation, her entire life. He'd made it look like she was the thief, the fraud, the criminal. And when the dust settled, Emma had nothing left but her ability to disappear. For 2 years, she'd been invisible. She worked her shifts, counted her tips, went home to her tiny flat in East London, and tried not to think about the life she'd lost. She'd become very good at being no one. But life has a funny way of finding you, even when you're hiding. It was a Wednesday evening when everything changed. The restaurant was full of the usual crowd, politicians, business executives, people who spent more on one meal than Emma made in a week. She was refilling wine glasses when her manager called out to her, "Table 7 needs attention, Emma. And please, don't mess this up. That's Alexander Hunt. Very important client." Emma nodded and picked up the bottle of expensive French wine. Alexander Hunt. Even she knew that name. Billionaire, business mogul. The kind of man who appeared in financial newspapers and had buildings named after him. She'd served his table a few times over the past months, and he'd never once actually looked at her. To men like him, people like her were practically furniture. But tonight was different. As Emma approached the table, she noticed the elegant older woman sitting with him. She had silver hair pulled back in a classic style, and kind eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 stories. And she was making hand gestures, trying to get someone's attention. Emma's heart clenched. She recognized those gestures immediately. Without thinking, Emma set down the wine and approached the woman. Her hands moved gracefully as she signed. "Good evening. How may I help you?" The woman's face lit up like sunshine breaking through clouds. Her hands danced with excitement as she responded in sign language, praising the chef's salmon and asking about the preparation. Emma forgot where she was. She forgot to be invisible. For those few minutes, she was just having a conversation with another human being. Something real and genuine in a world that had felt fake for so long. "You're very kind," the woman signed. "Most people just smile and nod when they realize I can't hear." "Where did you learn to sign?" "I studied languages at university," Emma replied automatically in sign language. Then she froze. She just revealed something about herself. Something that didn't fit with the invisible waitress she was supposed to be. "University?" A deep voice cut through the moment. "What university?" Emma turned to find Alexander Hunt staring at her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. He was tall. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Dark hair, expensive suit, the kind of presence that filled a room. But it was his eyes that caught her. Steel blue and sharp, missing nothing. "It was just a few classes, sir," Emma said quietly, trying to retreat back into invisibility. "Nothing important." "Nothing important." Alexander stepped closer, his voice quieter but somehow more dangerous. You speak sign language fluently. You mentioned university. And I'm betting that's not the only language you know, is it? What else are you hiding? The question hung in the air between them. Emma could feel the eyes of other diners on them, could sense her manager hovering nervously, probably calculating how much trouble she was causing. I should get back to work, Emma said, reaching for the wine bottle. Wait. Alexander caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she saw something flicker in his eyes that suggested he'd felt it too. I'm sorry, he said, releasing her wrist. That was harsh. Your mother is lovely, Emma said softly, desperate to change the subject. She likes you, Alexander said. My mother doesn't like many people. Maybe because most people don't take the time to really listen. The words slipped out before Emma could stop them. Alexander's eyebrows rose slightly, and for a moment, she thought she saw the hint of a smile. You're probably right, he said, but you didn't answer my question. What university? Emma felt trapped. The truth could destroy the careful life she'd built. But standing there, with Alexander's curious gaze fixed on her and his mother watching with obvious interest, Emma made a choice. Oxford, she said finally, the word feeling like confession. I studied at Oxford. Alexander's expression shifted. Surprise, confusion, something that might have been respect. Oxford has an excellent linguistics program, he said quietly. What made you decide to change careers? The innocent question hit Emma, like a punch to the stomach. How could she explain that she hadn't decided anything? That her career, her life, her entire future had been ripped away from her? Sometimes, she said carefully, life doesn't go according to plan. No, Alexander said softly, studying her face. I suppose it doesn't. And in that moment, standing in that expensive restaurant surrounded by people who had everything, Emma felt something shift. Something that had been frozen inside her for 2 years began to crack open. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change completely. The next few minutes passed in a blur. Alexander's mother kept signing to Emma, asking about her travels, her life, treating her like a real person instead of just a server. And Alexander watched it all with those sharp blue eyes, clearly piecing together a puzzle that Emma had tried desperately to keep hidden. When they finally left, Alexander paused at Emma's station. Have a good evening, Emma, he said quietly. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping. And next time, maybe you can tell me about Paris. I have a fear. Emma's blood turned to ice. She'd never mentioned Paris. His mother had talked about Paris, yes, but how had Alexander connected those dots? As she watched him leave, Emma realized her carefully maintained anonymity had just shattered completely. Alexander Hunt wasn't just curious anymore. He was investigating. That night, Emma's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Hope you don't mind. I got your number from the restaurant's HR department. This is Alexander Hunt. I wanted to thank you for being so kind to my mother. She hasn't stopped talking about you. Emma stared at the message, her hands shaking. HR department. Of course. Men like Alexander didn't ask for permission. They simply took what they wanted. She should have been angry about the privacy violation. Instead, she felt bone-deep terror, because she knew something Alexander didn't know yet, something that would destroy whatever interest he had in her. With trembling fingers, Emma opened her laptop and typed the search term she'd been avoiding for 2 years. Richard Wells and Quantum Financial. The results made her sick. Richard's company had exploded in growth, built entirely on the foundation of her stolen work. But it was the recent news that made her heart stop. Quantum Financial announces merger with Hunt Industries, Alexander Hunt, and Richard Wells to partner on landmark deal. Emma's hands flew to her mouth to stifle a scream. It couldn't be a coincidence. Richard was cruel, calculating, and utterly ruthless. If he was partnering with Alexander, there was a reason. Had Richard somehow discovered where she was? Was Alexander's sudden interest in her part of some elaborate trap? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Alexander. I know you're probably tired, but I can't stop thinking about our conversation. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Somewhere we can actually talk. Every instinct screamed at Emma to run. But she was tired, so tired of being afraid. And more than that, she was tired of being invisible. Against every rational thought, Emma typed back, "I work tomorrow night, but I'm free for lunch." The response came immediately. "Perfect. I'll pick you up at noon. Wear something comfortable. I have a feeling we're going to be doing a lot of talking." Emma buried her face in her hands. She was either about to make the biggest mistake of her life or finally take the first step toward reclaiming it. The next morning, Alexander texted her to meet him at the Oxford campus, specifically at the steps of the Bodleian Library where she'd spent countless hours as a student. Emma dressed carefully in a simple black dress, one of the few nice things she kept from her old life. When she arrived, Alexander was waiting with 2 coffee cups and an expression of barely contained curiosity. "You came," he said, standing to offer her coffee. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Emma admitted. "But I'm tired of running." "Running from what?" Emma took a deep breath. "From my past. From the person who destroyed my life and convinced everyone I deserved it." Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then he said very softly, "Richard Wells." Emma's coffee cup slipped from her hands, splashing across the stone steps. "How do you—" "Because I know Richard Wells very well," Alexander said quietly. "He's my business partner. We're about to close the biggest deal of both our careers." The world tilted. Emma grabbed Alexander's arm, her fingernails digging in. "You know him? How?" "Emma, if Richard is the one who did this to you, then we have a problem." "This is a setup," Emma whispered, releasing his arm and starting to stand. "This whole thing, the restaurant, your mother, your interest in me. He sent you, didn't he?" "No." Alexander caught her wrist. "Emma, I swear, Richard has no idea I'm here. I don't know what he did to you, but us talking, has nothing to do with him." "I don't believe you." "Then let me prove it." Alexander pulled out his phone. "I'm going to call him right now. I'll tell him I met someone from Oxford who knows him." Watch his reaction. He pressed the call button and put it on speaker. Alexander, perfect timing. Richard's smooth voice filled the space between them. "I was just reviewing the merger documents." "Quick question, Richard. I met someone yesterday who says they know you from university. Emma Taylor. Linguistics background. Worked in finance for a while." The silence that followed was deafening. "Emma Taylor?" Richard's voice was perfectly calm, perfectly controlled. "That name doesn't ring a bell. Should it?" The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that Emma felt physically ill. 2 years of her life, 2 years of love and partnership, and Richard could dismiss her existence without even pausing. "Maybe I misunderstood," Alexander said, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. "She seemed pretty sure she knew you. Business school creates a lot of casual connections. Maybe we were in a study group or something. I honestly can't place her." A study group. Emma made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. 3 years of partnership, 2 years of engagement, reduced to a study group. "Right," Alexander said. "Well, if you remember, let me know." "Of course." "And Alexander, be careful about people claiming to know me from the past. You'd be surprised how many try to use fake connections to get close to successful men like yourself." When the call ended, Emma and Alexander sat in silence. "Fake connections," Emma repeated numbly. "That's what our engagement was, apparently." Alexander stared at his phone like it had personally offended him. "You were engaged to Richard Wells. For 2 years, business partners for 3 years before that." Emma's voice sounded disconnected, like someone else was speaking. "We built Quantum Financial together. Every algorithm, every strategy, every innovation, that was my work. And he stole it all." Alexander's jaw clenched. "The charges against you, they didn't stick, obviously, or you'd be in prison. They didn't stick because Richard dropped them at the last minute," Emma explained. "Said he didn't want to ruin my life over a misunderstanding. Made himself look generous while ensuring everyone still believed I was guilty. After all, who drops theft charges unless they're certain the person is guilty but feeling charitable? That's diabolical. That's Richard." Emma laughed bitterly. and now he's your business partner. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? Alexander looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood and extended his hand. I'm going to find out the truth. And then I'm going to make sure Richard Wells pays for what he did to you. The word should have filled Emma with hope. But all she felt was weary resignation. Men like Richard didn't pay for their crimes. And men like Alexander, no matter how sincere they seemed, always chose money over justice when it mattered. But when she looked at his outstretched hand, something in his expression made her chest tighten. Against her better judgment, Emma took his hand. Why? She asked quietly. Why would you risk a business deal for someone you barely know? Alexander studied her face. Because yesterday, you were kind to my mother for no reason other than basic human decency. And because Richard just lied to my face about knowing you, which means everything you've told me is probably true, and everything he's told me is probably a lie. He started walking, still holding her hand. Come on, I want to show Alexander I can't. People will see your reputation. Emma, he stopped and turned to face her. I don't care about my reputation. I care about the truth. Alexander's office occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming tower in central London. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the Thames and the city beyond. Emma tried not to gawk as they walked through, where assistants in designer suits moved with quiet efficiency. Mr. Hunt, his assistant said as they approached, you're not scheduled to be in today. Change of plans, Jennifer. Hold my calls. Complete confidentiality on this meeting. Inside his office, Alexander poured himself a drink and gestured for Emma to sit. Tell me about the patents, Emma. Richard's company has registered 17 patents in the last 2 years. How many did you develop? Emma's breath caught. How did you? Because I've been reviewing Quantum's assets as part of our due diligence. The filing dates bothered me. 17 patents, all within 6 months of each other, supposedly developed by Richard's team. Alexander pulled out a tablet. But Richard's background doesn't suggest he has the technical expertise for this kind of sophisticated financial modeling. You investigated him? I investigate all my potential partners. The question is, why didn't I find any mention of you? Because Richard erased me, Emma whispered. After he filed the charges, he had my name removed from everything. Partnership agreements were rewritten. Patent applications were amended. He made it look like I never existed. Alexander was quiet. That level of systematic fraud, Emma, that's criminal. Good luck proving it. I have very good lawyers. Alexander reached for his phone. Jennifer, get me Charles Morrison at Morrison Webb and Associates. Alexander, no. Emma shot to her feet. This will destroy your deal. Good. If this deal is built on stolen property, it needs to be destroyed. You don't understand what you're risking. And you don't understand what I'm worth. Alexander set his phone down. Emma, I could lose this deal and 10 more like it and still have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. What I can't afford to lose is my integrity. The simple statement hit Emma like a physical blow. Why are you doing this? Alexander moved closer. Because you could have just smiled and nodded at my mother yesterday. Instead, you spent 10 minutes talking to her, treating her like a person. He paused. Because you speak 5 languages, but you're serving wine for tips. Because everything about you suggests someone who's been systematically diminished by people who should have valued you. He reached out slowly and brushed a tear from her cheek. You're someone worth fighting for, Emma Taylor. The question is, do you believe that? Emma stared up at him. I want to believe it. Then let me prove it to you. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened. Text from Richard. He wants to move our meeting to Monday. Says he has exciting new developments to discuss. Emma felt ice in her stomach. Alexander, you have to be careful. If he suspects you know about me, he won't. As far as Richard knows, I'm just another greedy businessman. Alexander's smile was sharp. He has no idea what's coming. What do you need me to do? Emma asked quietly. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Trust. The word Richard had weaponized against her. The word she'd sworn never to give anyone again. But looking into Alexander's blue eyes, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Hope. Yes, she said. I can do that. Good. Because Monday morning, Richard Wells is going to discover that his past has finally caught up with him. As Alexander pulled her into his arms, Emma allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, justice wasn't dead. And if it was, at least this time she wouldn't be facing Richard's wrath alone. For the first time in 2 years, Emma Taylor was no longer running. She was ready to fight back. Monday morning arrived gray and overcast, matching Emma's mood perfectly. She sat in a coffee shop across from Alexander's building, watching the entrance through rain-streaked windows. He'd insisted she stay away during his meeting with Richard, but she couldn't just go home and wait. Her phone buzzed. Meeting starts in 10 minutes. Remember, Richard doesn't know you're involved. Stay safe. Emma typed back, be careful. He's more dangerous than you think. The response came immediately. I know, but so am I. 43 floors above her, Alexander Hunt was about to discover just how thoroughly Richard Wells had played them all. The meeting started pleasantly enough. Richard walked in with his characteristic confident stride. Perfectly styled hair, expensive suit, that smile that seemed genuine until you looked at his eyes. Alexander, good to see you, Richard said, shaking his hand. Thanks for moving this up. They discussed the merger, timeline acceleration, additional assets. Richard was smooth, professional, convincing. Then Alexander asked a question that would change everything. Tell me about these algorithms. Your team developed these in-house. Absolutely. My lead researcher is brilliant. PhD from Cambridge, years of experience. We've been working on this technology for over 3 years. The lie came so smoothly that Alexander felt cold rage building in his chest. 3 years seems like a significant investment. How you fund the research? Richard's smile flickered for just a moment. Initial funding from private investors. Then we reinvested profits. And your lead researcher, they've been with you the entire 3 years? Oh, longer than that. We built something truly special together. Alexander felt sick. Every word was a calculated distortion of truth. I'd love to meet this researcher. Unfortunately, he's in Singapore right now. Very hands-on approach, but not much for corporate meetings. I see. Well, I'd appreciate reviewing the development documentation. My technical team will want to understand the architecture. Of course, I'll have everything to you by end of week. When Richard finally left, Alexander waited until the elevator doors closed before calling Emma. How did it go? She asked immediately. Exactly as you predicted. He lied about everything. The timeline, the research team, the funding. Emma, I've met some unscrupulous people, but the way he erased your existence. Alexander's voice was tight with disgust. I tried to warn you. You did, and you were right about everything. There was a pause. How are you holding up? I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Emma admitted. Richard doesn't make mistakes. If he's being this cavalier about the lies, it's because he thinks he's already won. What do you mean? I mean he's planning something. Alexander, what if he knows? What if this is all some elaborate trap? That's impossible. There's no way he could know we've been in contact. Are you sure? You asked him about someone from Oxford. Then 3 days later you're suddenly asking detailed questions about his development team and intellectual property. That's quite a coincidence. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. You think he's figured out you're the Oxford connection. I think Richard doesn't believe in coincidences any more than you do. Emma, where are you right now? Coffee shop across from your building. Why? Because if you're right, if Richard has figured out our connection, then you're not safe. Emma felt ice forming in her stomach. Marcus, I should disappear. No, running to work the first time. This time, we force his hand. Make him come to us. That's suicide. No, it's strategy. Alexander's voice carried confidence that was both reassuring and terrifying. Emma, I didn't build a billion-pound company by backing down from fights. I'm not going to let Richard intimidate you. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you call Richard directly. Walk straight into his office and demand answers. Alexander, that's exactly what he's expecting. That's what makes it perfect. He expects you to hide. The last thing he's prepared for is you walking in and taking control. Emma could see the logic, but the thought of facing Richard made her feel sick. Even if I wanted to, what would be the point? He'll just lie. Not if you're not going alone. I'm going to tell Richard my technical team found inconsistencies in his IP documentation. I'll say I need to meet with his lead researcher to clarify a few points. He'll make excuses. Then I'll make it clear the deal depends on it. Richard won't risk losing this merger. Emma's pulse quickened, and then you walk into that meeting as Dr. Emma Taylor, independent consultant specializing in algorithmic trading systems. Someone I've hired to verify his intellectual property. The audacity took Emma's breath away. He'll recognize me immediately. Of course he will. And he'll be so shocked that he'll reveal more than he intends. David's strength is controlling situations from the shadows. But put him face to face with someone he thought he destroyed, he'll make mistakes. Emma felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. A spark of her old self, the confident woman who'd built a company from nothing. What if he refuses? What if he calls security? On what charges? You're not a fugitive, Emma. You were never formally charged with anything. Richard's power over you exists only as long as you believe it does. Alexander's voice became gentle. I know you're scared. I know the last time you trusted someone. It ended in disaster. But this time is different. How? Because this time you're not alone. This time you have someone who believes you. This time you have me. Emma looked at her reflection in the coffee shop window, the woman she'd become, scared and diminished. And she made a choice. Okay, she said quietly. Let's do it. You're sure? I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure. It's time to stop running. 20 minutes later, Emma was back in Alexander's office, and he was making the call that would change everything. Richard, it's Alexander. We have a problem. My technical team found some inconsistencies in your IP documentation. I need to meet with your lead researcher tomorrow. It's urgent. There was a pause. Then Richard's voice, smooth as silk. Of course, Alexander. I'll make the arrangements. What time works for you? When Alexander hung up, he looked at Emma with grim satisfaction. Tomorrow at 2, he's bringing his lead researcher. Or he'll have another excuse. Then we'll see just how badly he wants this deal. Emma took a deep breath. Tomorrow, she would face the man who destroyed her life. Tomorrow, she would either reclaim her future or watch it be destroyed all over again. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Emma Taylor felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The Quantum Financial offices were all glass and steel, designed to project success and power. Emma stood on the pavement outside, staring up at the building that had once represented all her dreams. Second thoughts. Alexander appeared beside her with 2 coffee cups. About 100. Emma accepted the coffee gratefully. I used to love this building. Richard and I picked it together. And you built the company together. The fact that he stole credit doesn't change that. They crossed the street, Alexander's hand warm on her back. The lobby was exactly as Emma remembered, marble floors, expensive art, understated luxury. In the elevator, Emma's heart hammered. 28, 29, 30. Each floor bringing her closer to a confrontation she'd avoided for 2 years. Breathe, Alexander said quietly. You belong here. This company exists because of your work. The elevator doors opened. A young receptionist, Emma, didn't recognize, smiled professionally. Mr. Hunt, Mr. Wells is waiting for you in the main conference room. They walked down a hallway lined with framed articles about quantum success. Emma's stomach clenched. In 2 years, Richard had built an entire mythology around himself, erasing her completely. The conference room doors opened, and there he was. Richard Wells looked exactly the same. Perfect hair, expensive suit, that practiced smile. He was standing at the head of the table, positioned to project authority. For a moment, Emma felt herself shrinking. Then Alexander's hand pressed against her back, and she remembered why she was here. "Alexander, right on time," Richard said warmly, "and you must be Dr. Taylor." His eyes met Emma's across the room. She saw the exact moment recognition hit. Shock, calculation, fear, flickering across his face before the mask slammed back into place. "I'm sorry," Richard said carefully. "Have we met before?" The casual dismissal hit Emma like a blow, but instead of despair, she felt something else entirely. Pure, clean rage that burned away 2 years of fear. "We've met," Emma said quietly, walking into the room with her head high. "Though I'm not surprised you don't remember. You always were better at forgetting inconvenient people." Richard's smile never wavered, but Emma caught the tightening around his eyes. "I'm afraid I don't follow." "Emma Taylor," she said clearly, extending her hand. "Former partner and co-founder of Quantum Financial. Though I believe your current version of history has me listed as never existed." The silence was deafening. "I think there's some confusion," Richard said, not taking her hand. "Quantum has never had a partner named Emma Taylor." "Really?" Emma pulled out her phone, showed him photos. Their launch party, late nights working together, intimate dinners. Her engagement ring visible in several shots. Richard glanced at the photos and shrugged. "I attend a lot of events. I've taken pictures with hundreds of people." "Hundreds of people," Emma repeated quietly. "Is that what I was to you? Just another face in the crowd?" "I'm sorry, but I really don't know what you're hoping to accomplish." "This woman," Alexander interrupted, his voice deadly quiet, "is Dr. Emma Taylor, who holds patents for 17 of the technologies your company claims to have developed." Richard's mask slipped. Real fear flashed across his face. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Emma pulled out a tablet. "Would you like to see the original development notes? The ones in my handwriting, dated 6 months before you filed the patents? Or perhaps the emails where you asked me to explain the code because you couldn't understand it? Anyone can forge documents. Anyone can," Emma agreed, "but these aren't forgeries. They're backups from my personal cloud storage, complete with metadata. Would you like to explain why your company's foundational technology was developed on my personal laptop?" "This is ridiculous." Richard turned to Alexander, desperation creeping into his voice. "Surely you can see what this is. Some disgruntled former employee." "Former employee?" Emma's voice cut through his words like a blade. "We were engaged for 2 years, Richard. We built this company together. We shared a bed, shared dreams about our future." She moved closer. "And when you decided you wanted it all for yourself, you didn't just steal my work. You destroyed my reputation, froze my assets, turned everyone against me. Then you had the audacity to act like I never existed. Even if any of that were true." "It is true," Alexander said quietly. "Every word of it." Richard looked between them, calculating. "You believe her?" "Alexander, this woman is clearly unstable. She's telling the truth. My legal team has spent 3 days investigating your IP claims. We found the original patent applications, Richard. The ones that show Emma's name as co-inventor before you altered them. We found the partnership agreements that you rewrote. We found everything." Richard's face went pale. "Those are sealed corporate documents, which I have every legal right to investigate before purchasing." Alexander's voice was ice. "And what I've discovered is that you're trying to sell me stolen goods. This is insane. Maybe we can work something out." "Compensation?" Emma's laugh was bitter. "Richard, you don't get to negotiate your way out of theft." "Then what do you want?" Emma looked at the man who'd once been everything to her. "I want justice. I want the world to know who really built Quantum Financial. I want my name restored to every patent. I want a full accounting of every pound this company made using my technology." She paused. "And I want you to experience what it feels like to lose every... Ready to start planning the rest of our lives?" Alexander asked, his arms tightening around her. Emma looked at her engagement ring sparkling in the morning sunlight, then up at the man who'd helped her remember she was worth fighting for. "I'm ready," she said, and for the first time in years, she meant it without reservation. Outside the windows, London hummed with life, full of people starting new chapters, fighting their own battles, discovering their own strength. Somewhere in a prison, Richard was beginning to understand what it felt like to lose everything. But here in this kitchen, filled with morning light and laughter and love, Emma and Alexander were just beginning to understand what it meant to have everything that truly mattered. And it was more beautiful than either of them had ever dared to dream. Remember, your past doesn't define your future. Sometimes losing everything teaches you what's truly valuable. And sometimes the courage to trust again leads to something more beautiful than you ever imagined.